And at last, our dream home is complete, and we'll be moving in a week. In the midst of it all, my husband dropped a bombshell.
Seems like Mom and the others have started packing up too. It lasts much.
아니, is your mom moving too?
Aren't we proposed? And what are you talking about? Of course they are moving to the new house.
Wait, by new house, do you mean your mom bought a house too?
Are you without it? That the new house is the one we bought.
Wait, what do you mean?
My name is Maria, a 34-year-old corporate employee. I've always been dedicated to my work, prioritizing it over romance. This focus allowed me to be promoted at an early age, be entrusted with various tasks, and often land in positions with responsibility. I work for a pharmaceutical company where my role is to visit healthcare professionals, such as doctors, to provide, collect, and convey information about the quality, effectiveness, and safety of our product. I am busy traveling to various hospitals daily and preparing presentations on new drugs for doctors, even when I return to the office. My workaholic tendencies are such that my parents have often suggested, if you can't find a good man, why not go on blind dates? To which I always retort, I don't have time for that. Going on blind dates willy-nilly, I don't want to be so indiscriminate. However, I've started to wonder if I should continue my life as a single woman. My friends are getting married one by one, and my close friend who used to say, let's enjoy our single life and travel a lot, is now a mother of two. Although I still believe that marriage isn't everything in life, I'm starting to feel a sense of urgency about whether I should end my life without experiencing marriage. That's when I met Robert, who later became my husband. A friend, hearing about my concern, introduced me to him at a party she hosted. Robert, 5 years younger than me, was 29, apparently works as a web designer, extends to books. Like me, he had prioritized his work and often ended up being dumped because he wasn't good at balancing work and love. I thought he's just like me and felt a strange kinship with him. We hit it off right away and began dating. He understood our work commitments, so we only met when our schedules allowed, which made the relationship very comfortable. He seemed very dedicated to his work and gave me a very serious impression, which made me think that I could marry him. His parents had also suggested to him, it's about time you should think about marriage, and had even brought up the subject of arranged marriages. This similarity in our circumstances made me feel that he was indeed the right person to marry. After about a year of dating, we got married. My parents were thrilled that I was getting married, and my mom even burst into tears. I believe she was genuinely happy because she cried so much. Not just when we announced our marriage, but also during our wedding ceremony. This is how the married life of my husband and I started, but we immediately hit a wall. That was the presence of my in-laws. Since our house was about a 10-minute walk from my in-laws, we often got called over. It was always my mother-in-law who would call us, seemingly with the intention of badgering the daughter-in-law while meeting her son. My mother-in-law frequently made snide remarks toward me to the extent that my husband and father-in-law wouldn't notice, and she would often make me do household chores for no good reason.
Maria, I have a backache. Could you do cleaning for me?
Ah, okay.
Great. Could you clean all the rooms and corridors on the first and second floor?
Oh, the questions.
Another person who troubled me was my sister-in-law. She had a sharp tongue to begin with and would openly insult me, regardless of whether my husband or father-in-law were around.
Maya, you seem like such a plain and boring woman.
My husband and father-in-law would scold her, but she just ignored them and did whatever she wanted.
I want to eat something sweet, Maria. Go and buy it.
Oh, perfect timing. Please also buy some ingredients for dinner while you're out.
Though I wondered why I had to do these things, I initially thought it was better not to rebel against my in-laws, so I complied quietly. However, this only served to encourage my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. They started to harass me every chance they got. After that, I grew weary of visiting my in-laws and started telling my husband, I don't want to go. My husband said, well, I won't force you to come, but also expressed his dissatisfaction, saying, they're my family, so please try to get along with them. I couldn't have gotten along with them if my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been kind. Since my husband didn't forcibly take me, I was able to avoid going to my in-laws for a while, but I had to go during Christmas and Thanksgiving because it was hard to decline those invitations after usually refusing them. However, when I showed up at my in-laws, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law treated me as if they'd gotten a new toy to play with. I only have to see them once or twice a year, so I just have to endure this. I would tell myself to get through these visits. If it weren't for the situation with my in-laws, my married life with my husband would have been close to ideal. He knew I loved my job, so he let me do overtime whenever I wanted, and we shared household chores. I was truly grateful that he was understanding about my work. My husband also supported my dream, that is to build my own home. This has been a dream of mine since I was a child. Well, even though my husband is supportive, I decided to build the house using only the money I saved by myself, so there's no financial help from him. So rather than support, it's more like he's understanding of the situation. The funds for my dream house have been mostly saved from part-time jobs since my student days. It's not something to openly brag about, but I have a pretty good salary at my company, so I was able to save a decent amount each month. This is one of the reasons why I was able to prepare enough funds at this age. Finally, the funds for my dream house reached the necessary amount, so I promptly requested a construction company, floor plan, and design such. I had researched variously since long ago, so I was able to smoothly convey my wishes.
So, I was thinking of making this your workspace, Robert. Since your web design job is often working from home, I thought you'd find it relaxing if it's a place with good sunlight and a nice outside view.
That sounds great. I'm really happy. Thank you.
The dream house is quite far from my in-laws, so my mother-in-law and sister-in-law probably won't be able to visit often. Excitedly, I waited for the house to be completed. And finally, our dream house was completed and we decided to move in a week later. In the midst of all this, my husband made a surprising remark.
My parents have been packing up quite a bit too.
Wait, are your parents moving?
Right. Of course they're moving to the new house.
Wait, the new house? Did your parents buy a house too?
Are you spacing out? The new house is our house.
Wait, what do you mean? Why are parents moving into my house?
Why? Well, when I talked about the new house, they said they wanted to live there too.
Bent, why did you decide something like that on your own? I can't believe this.
What's the matter? Is that bad?
Of course it is. My dream was to build and live in my ideal home. Why'd I have to be interrupted by your parents?
It's the Arlen spec. They're my family. You may not have noticed, but I've been bullied by your mother and sister. I can't live with them.
Even after I said this much, my husband did not understand and said something unbelievable.
Inoik, stop being so selfish.
Wait,
My mom and sis were saying this. They said they were troubled by your bad attitude. They said they just wanted you to be a good wife.
you took their side? You believed them?
Explications? You really don't listen, do you? You're older but act like a child. Anyway, I'm giving our new house to my parents. If you resist, yeah, we'll get a divorce. Yes, I'm serious. I'm going to visit my parents' house today. You should stay alone and cool down your head. Then reflect on your actions.
And saying that, my husband went to his parents' house. I felt my love for my husband cool down in an instant. After all, he was a child born of that mother. Perhaps his self-centered nature was fundamentally the same. The next day, my husband returned to home with a smug look on his face.
Have you reflected yet?
What am I supposed to reflect on?
Are you sure of your words? Here's the divorce papers. I've already filled out my part. Didn't I tell you? I'm serious. If you're not repentant, we're getting a divorce. Think you can remarry at your age? Just stop being stubborn and listen to what I'm saying. Even my parents said they'd forgive you.
I understand.
Good girl. If you've learned your lesson, don't defy me again.
I can't believe I didn't see my husband's true colors until now. Maybe he showed his true colors when I got a valuable new house. It seems like he's the type who becomes arrogant when he succeeds. I'm glad I found out before we started living together. I immediately filed the divorce papers and handed in at the city hall. We're no longer husband and wife and I no longer have to let his family into my house. Luckily, to make me reflect, he had been staying at his parents' house for a few days, so I was able to move all my belongings to the new house first. The new house was just as I had imagined. Every corner of it was exciting. I bought new furniture and appliances and replaced them with the ones I had chosen. So I was filled with happiness just being in this space. Then, my ex-husband came to visit the house. When I looked at the video from the intercom, it seemed he had brought his parents and sister with him. Oh, I forgot to tell him that I had filed the divorce papers. When I answered the intercom, my ex-husband said irritably, "Open up quickly." Sorry, I can't do that.
Hun, what are you messing around for? And let us in. Damn, what do you mean moving in all by yourself without telling us?
Sorry, I forgot to tell you.
I'll forgive you. Just let us in now.
That's why it's impossible.
You...
What I forgot to tell you was that I had filed for divorce.
Wait, what do you mean?
That means I've submitted the divorce papers you gave me. We're no longer husband and wife. That's why I can't let you all in this house.
You can't be serious.
Hey, Robert. What's this about a divorce? Didn't you two agree to live together?
And even if you were divorced, the house is marital property, right? Why is the wife occupying it?
That's right. Our son should have the right to live here too.
Robert, didn't you explain it properly? This house is entirely in my name, as I paid for it in full.
Well,
Was through the video intercom, it was clear that my former in-laws were at a loss for words.
Hey, Robert. You always said, come to her house. What's going on?
well, that's...
Anyway, that's the situation. Can you please leave now?
Don't joke around. Why do we have to listen to you?
If you continue to linger, I'll call the police.
The police?
Like upon hearing the word police, Robert's family were completely taken aback. Then, the father-in-law apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry, Maria. We'll leave, so please don't call the police." And they left in their car. As for the ex-husband and his family, it seems they met a miserable end. The father-in-law, having learned about how I was being bullied by his wife and daughter, divorced his wife in disbelief and cut ties with both his son and daughter. Incidentally, since they mistakenly thought they could move into my new home, they had already put their house up for sale. So the mother-in-law and sister-in-law, abandoned by the father-in-law, had no choice but to depend on Robert, who now supports them while being blamed by the two for "it's your fault." I wish them well as they continue to shift blame on each other and lead a life of poverty. It serves them right. On the other hand, I'm living very comfortably in my new home and often invite my parents and friends over to have a good time. While I do want to experience love again, now that I have my own house, I intend to be more careful in choosing a partner so that I don't fall for the wrong person again. I discovered my husband of several decades had been having an affair. The other woman is a young lady, just 20 years old, much younger than me. When I confronted my husband, he coldly said to me, "Divorce me for her. You can have custody of the kids." My world turned black, words failing me. Moreover, he'd gotten his mistress pregnant. I told our daughters about the situation. Embracing a suggestion from them, I decided to take drastic measures. "Just you wait, I'll give you back soon." My name is Natalie Johnson, 47 years old. I married John, who was the same age when I was 25, and in the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed. We have 3 daughters, the oldest in college, the second and third in high school. They're not fully independent yet, but they're at an age when they can manage things on their own. Now that the children were less dependent, I was able to immerse myself in the work which I love. I've been working for a major corporation since before I was married, and I make more money than my husband. Furthermore, the house we live in was inherited from my parents. We have no mortgage payments, allowing us to live comfortably. With the kids growing up, we had more time as a couple. Pitched one night, while we were having a beer together, my husband started speaking with a grin.
Hey, Natalie, the kids aren't as dependent on us anymore. How about going on a trip? Just the 2 of us, like old times?
Oh, really? When was the last time we went on a trip together?
We're always helping out around here, and we both work hard, don't we? Indulging a little won't hurt, haha.
Haha, that's true. The girls are old enough to handle things on their own. Should we leave the housework to them?
Yeah, it's a great idea. I need to arrange for some time off work. Where would you like to go? It might be nice to relax at a hot spring resort.
Hot Spring Resort. Sounds great. He started to plan the trip with a delighted expression on his face.
I couldn't help but smile at his boyish enthusiasm. Whenever I had a free moment during work or my commute, I found myself checking out travel websites. The destination for a trip was gradually being narrowed down, and I'd already filled in our daughters about our plans. Since I was happy that he suggested the trip itself.
Spurred 1 month on the chapter vacation discussions deeper water frolic with Tormwood what I actor yet. I was waiting for my husband to get home so we could finalize our travel schedule.
Usually, he's home by the time I return from work, but that day was different. When I got home, he was nowhere to be found, and our daughters couldn't provide any clues. His late returns were always preceded by a call, so his absence made me uneasy. If he hadn't called by the next day, I decided to call him.
As I was considering my options, he finally arrived home, just after 11 p.m.
Welcome home. I was worried since you were late.
Jeez, I rushed over to him, but his face was somber.
What happened? Did anything wrong at work?
In response to my inquiry, he opened his mouth slowly. Absolutely, we need to talk. Severed bash, backstruck.
X or Puzme? What's up? You look so serious.
I've been having an affair.
Wait. I said I've been cheating on you with another woman.
I was too shocked to speak properly. Cheating? My husband? In my confusion, I managed to stammer out a response.
What are you saying? An affair? You wouldn't.
Failure, but I have. It's been going on for a year.
Breaks a gear? That's a joke, right? You show no signs.
I tried my best to keep it from you. Meeting her after work when you were working late, telling you I was working on weekends when I went out.
No, that's a lie. You wouldn't.
As if to soothe my distraught, my husband grabbed both my shoulders. Or Crashnider, looking straight into my eyes, he opened his mouth again. Shoot! I'm really sorry, but there's no turning back now.
What do you mean, no going back? Stop kidding around. We've been together for 20 years, haven't we?
Anyway, that's the situation. I need divorce for her.
Divorce? If it's for her? What the heck is going on? We were just talking about going on a trip together, weren't we?
I'm really sorry. You're mesmerized.
I couldn't comprehend what he was saying. Has my husband been replaced by someone else? Carefully, I confronted him and he began to explain the situation. According to his story, the woman he was cheating with was a junior at the same company. Moreover, she was a temporary employee, barely 20 years old. She started to work at his company about a year ago, and somehow he became her mentor. After work, he began to tutor her, and they started to have coffee breaks together. Spectre going out for dinner a few times after work, they fell into a romantic relationship.
She's so innocent, cute, and she can't do without me.
You've got to be kidding. And she's 27 years younger.
He talks about the charm of her. I feel as if I have no charm. Then he dropped a huge bomb.
You remember me saying I wouldn't divorce for her sake? But to be honest, she's pregnant.
What? Pregnant?
Yeah, so I think I should take responsibility and marry her. Luckily, our girls are becoming less dependent.
Hold on a minute. That doesn't matter, right? Those girls are our daughters. You know...
Don't worry, I'll give you the custody.
What? Ekwakwaignai.
While we're having such an important conversation, my husband's eyes are gleaming with a calm smile. Does he really think that if he gives up custody, I'll just accept this? I felt like I was being made a fool of, and the sadness that I've been feeling began to turn into anger. Before I knew it, I was yelling louder than I ever had before.
Don't be absurd. This is too much.
There's no point in saying that, right? This life that's about to be born is more important to me now.
Why then did you say, let's go on a trip as a couple, your fuel? I was really looking forward to that trip.
I didn't think she was pregnant at the time.
So if she hadn't gotten pregnant, you would have kept cheating on me in secret, is that it?
I dissuade him, and I could toss the topic. Anywhere, drown. I'm bringing her with smile. Let's talk things over then.
With a quick change of subject, he brought out the already filled out divorce papers and rushed to the bathroom. What the hell is going on? He confesses to an affair out of the blue, then says the woman is pregnant. How much more can he mock me? Having prepared dinner for him and waited, I feel like such a fool. I was tormented by my chaotic emotions. However, no matter how much my anger built up, the situation wouldn't change. I decided to confront my husband's affair head on. The next day, as he said, he brought over his mistress. I told our daughters to stay in their rooms and had my husband and his mistress sit on the couch. The woman, who introduced herself as Lisa, bowed to me as soon as she sat down.
I am truly sorry for all of this.
Your apology doesn't help. My husband and I have 3 daughters.
I understand that. For the sake of our child in my womb, could you please divorce John?
Wait, why should I have to destroy my family for the sake of your child?
At her nonchalant request for divorce, I lost my temper. I raised my voice, yelling.
Don't be ridiculous.
And she covered her mouth with her hand, as if she pretended.
Oh, I'm going to waste it! 40 people out.
With that, my husband looked at her with concern.
Hey, Lisa. A body. Are you okay? Did you smile at?
I'm sorry, John. I should be your sisters. John, I think a bit.
Must be morning sickness, right? Ines, Roshios, what do you want to do? Do you need to go to the bathroom?
Find you bus Retaliation. What? Can you show me the way?
Bus to Ibra. Test. Come this way. I test first.
I saw my husband being more gentlemanly than I had ever seen him before. He helped Lisa out, looking a bit hesitant when she returned from the bathroom.
Lisa, take it as easy, alright? We got our precious little baby inside you.
I enjoy such a surprise. I'm sorry, Joetti with eyes smash with that action. Wait till Natalie yelled at me, I got suddenly scared.
I'm sorry, you're right. And she asked her. If she had agreed to divorce straight away, we wouldn't be in this mess.
No, it's okay. This is a trial we have to overcome in order to be together.
They smiled and held hands like a scene straight out of a movie. At that moment, my feelings for my husband froze at a tremendous speed. If you had just agreed to an honest divorce, what, you think it's my fault? It wasn't you who cheated on me in the first place? If this happens, I'll divorce you or whatever. I decided to agree to the divorce because further discussion was getting ridiculous. Shortly thereafter, I removed my husband and his unfaithful partner from the house and locked the door. My daughters emerged from their rooms, probably having heard us.
Is what we heard true?
I gave a small nod to my eldest daughter's question. I couldn't hide it anymore. I called my daughters into the living room to talk about my husband's affair.
So we're getting a divorce. I want you girls to decide who you want to be with from now on.
In response to my words, my daughters all said together, well, obviously we're sticking with Mom, right?
But it's unfair if Dad doesn't get any sort of punishment. Exactly. Let's get back at him and his new mom.
Iterations. Immediately afterwards, my daughters suggested a plan. My children are very clever. I was surprised at what they suggested, but I took them up on it and decided to put on a show. So a few days later, I called my husband and told him that I needed to talk to him about alimony. When he came to visit me, I immediately started to talk to him.
I'll be asking for a proper alimony payment after the divorce. As for custody, you can have it.
At my words, my husband rolled his eyes. Then our daughters appeared. When he saw them, he opened his mouth as if he was upset.
Hey, you all. Would you rather with your mom, huh?
A question is, why? We're obviously going with you, Dad. Who we choose is our business, isn't it? After all, a dad's income is more stable, right?
Hold on. Ian accent. And $90 waits there. Your mom. Here's more in this house.
The daughters nonchalantly brushed off their father's desperate persuasion.
It's okay. It's okay. As long as we get our usual pocket money, we're good. Right. As long as us three sisters stick together. That's all that matters. Exactly. In fact, Dad, you should feel honored we're choosing you.
Wait, that is a burgers, Dad. We reverting.
He seemed confused, but had no choice but to accept his children's decision. He'd always been a pushover when it came to his daughters. My husband reluctantly agreed that he would have custody of the children. Since my husband is the cause of the divorce, there will be no child support payments from me. We decided to divorce, strictly collecting the alimony from him and his mistress. The next day, we submitted the divorce papers to City Hall. The alimony was $30,000 from my husband and $15,000 from his mistress. We received the entire amount at one time. Our daughters would stay at my house on weekends and live with their father and his mistress during the rest of the week. Though their new home was a small apartment where the mistress had previously lived. Living with 5 people in such a small space must have been quite uncomfortable. But that was all part of the plan. Just wait and see. I'll make sure they regret betraying me and our daughters. 2 months later, just when I was thinking it might be about time, my ex-husband and Lisa barged into my house.
Hey, he's a witch master. What's wrong with them?
Dealing with those spoiled brats is impossible. I lost my temper.
The 2 of them, faces red and panting heavily, complained together. In response, I replied calmly, could you not be rude? All 3 of them are my pride and joy daughters. They're all good kids.
Could you not be rude? All 3 of them are my pride and joy daughters. They're all good kids.
And do that. What's them good kids? They're always complaining. Oh, my expensive meals are, I didn't get enough allowance every single day. I think that. What's them good kids? They're always complaining. I cannot allow it though. Every single day, here's her jar.
Wait, find out about her, and why do we have to pay for their tuition and textbooks? No one told us about that.
Well, isn't that a given? After all, you two are their parents.
Their home is too small. I've never heard our family of 5 living in a 1-bedroom apartment.
That house was originally rented for me to live alone. The neighbors on both sides keep complaining, and even the landlord keeps saying that please move out.
Well, that's your own fault. Besides, if the girls say we want Dad to have custody, then there's nothing you can do about it.
My stink shines brighter.
Both of them were speechless, their expressions bitter. After a long silence, John lowered his head and spoke in a small voice.
Please take them in.
What did you just say?
I said take them in. This was precious for Abba speakers. We're about to have a baby. If we keep giving in to the girls' demands, we won't be able to raise our child properly.
Raising them is also part of parenting, you know. Stop complaining.
Here's your breast puff for 30. When did you become such a heartless person? Need to understand other people's feelings. You're the worst. Made the best that are each spoken.
He was livid, face turning red as he yelled. To incitation, I let out a big sigh and spoke in an inciting tone.
Don't understand other people's feelings. You're the worst. Are you talking about yourself?
Hey, which is?
Who cheated, made a baby with mistress, and said please divorce me for her? Who was the one who betrayed me first and did the worst thing? Do you remember?
That's a past in the past. Retribution. But don't bring that up again.
It seems he still doesn't understand how selfish he's being. He's now blaming me, together with his mistress. I didn't hold back and said, enough is enough. It's in the past. Don't just neatly wrap things up on your own. Do you know how the girls and I felt?
It's not like we weren't hurt when you betrayed us. Despite all this, you keep being selfish.
Hey, but I advised for the affair, didn't I? Let's take them in, please.
Fine, I will. I feel sorry for the girls to stay with such a bitch like you. But in return, make sure you pay child support, all right? You have a responsibility as their father until all of them grow up and become independent adults. Shut up! Don't you dare play the victim now? You should have thought of that before you got your mistress pregnant. Now get out of here and never show your face to me again.
His face turned pale and he collapsed on the spot. After hanging his head down for a while, he whispered to Lisa, "Let's go home." At that moment, Lisa, who had been silent up to now, gave his cheek a big slap.
Don't joke with me. I ended up in debt even after paying alimony and now using child support. But you got to be kidding. What's the point of lying then?
What's going on, Lisa? And B, what you mean by? Are we supposed to raise our child together?
There's no child.
Time stopped for a moment at the unexpected revelation of his mistress. Her Tilton connections to began to question her.
No child. I'm this. Ben, our child is Aries.
But the pregnancy was a lie. I just thought you were rich and that's why I wanted to marry you. The pregnancy was a lie. I just thought you were rich and that's why I wanted to marry you.
What are you talking about, Lisa? That's a lie, right?
The house you were bragging about was actually your wife's, wasn't it? I can't even get a house, be charged for alimony, and be forced to take care of stupid girls. Fine, I enough it. There's nothing good in marrying you. But there's me right now.
I can't believe this. Acceptors or transfers.
My ex-husband clung to Lisa with tears in his eyes.
That's my way. This move to become. I'm leaving. I'm gay.
She pushed him away and left the house. My ex-husband, who was thrown away by his mistress, immediately knelt down on the ground and begged me.
That's pretty give me. Oh, please, give me the chance. I distress. No matter how many times he begged, I of course turned him down. Boys.
To defrish him, I promptly drove him out of the house and called back our daughters at that time. After that, I officially regained custody of our daughters and demanded child support from my ex-husband. The payment of child support for 3 children must have been a heavy burden for him, who had exhausted his savings by paying alimony. Moreover, other employees witnessed the dispute between him and Lisa at work. The news about their relationship spread rapidly. Lisa's contract was terminated, and my ex-husband was relegated to a less important department. His salary was reduced, and with an even tougher life ahead, with nothing left for him, he seemed to be struggling just to make ends meet each month. Now he reportedly can't even afford proper meals, and appears to have become quite snobbish. When I told this story to our daughters, they high-fived each other with broad smiles. The daughter's strategy was a great success, and the four of us celebrated. From now on, a life of four women begins. Even without a father, I want to take responsibility as a parent and raise my daughters to be fine adults. Chin off my hands, then she comes to my door.
I have my husband wrapped around my finger now. Being beautiful is such a sin.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Let's just...
You didn't notice until now. Wait, he's mine now.
Richard falls for this woman. And with that, everything we've built up until now comes crashing down. Is Richard really okay with this? More importantly, does he even understand what's going on? Everything goes dark before my eyes. My name is Taylor, a 45-year-old woman this year. Currently, I work as a yoga instructor in the suburbs of Tokyo. When people hear yoga instructor, they might imagine something glamorous, but that's usually only for young female instructors. To be honest, older instructors like myself, in their 50s, don't usually have that much popularity. That's why my life depends on my husband's income. My husband Richard is 48 years old, older than me. At 48, most people worry about the results of their health checkup and are fearful of being diagnosed with the metabolic syndrome. But Richard is different. He has a radiant complexion, full head of hair, and most importantly, a toned body that's free from the metabolic syndrome at the age of 48. He's my proud husband. When I show Richard's photo to my classmates at the yoga studio, most people are surprised and end up comparing him to their own husbands. That's why I always start with a sales pitch. Like, if you bring your husband to my yoga class, he'll transform into someone who looks like this. It has become a staple for me.
Richard and I met through my work as a yoga instructor, with him as my student.
Outside of work, I am a housewife who takes care of things while he is away. That has been my daily routine, and I thought it would continue like that until that woman showed up. Our daily lives changed completely because of her. It all started with a regular yoga trial course. One day, a woman from somewhere was in the class.
Found that if I'm sure before. If she is a former student, it would be rude not to say hello. I thought to myself, struggling to remember where I had seen her before.
But I just couldn't seem to remember, even though I thought I was good at remembering faces. I started feeling down, thinking, maybe I'm getting old and can't remember people's faces anymore. But looking back now, maybe deep down, I didn't want to remember her, because she was such a terrible woman. The answer came from her. During a break, the same woman came up to me and started talking.
Breastplast McCunts? Hey, do you remember me?
When I saw her grinning face, I finally remembered. This woman in front of me was my classmate, Alan. Alan and I grew up in the same neighborhood and played together since we were little. Alan, who was cute and adorable in both her appearance and behavior, was well known in our town, and people used to say, this girl could become an idol in the future. It sounds like a parent's exaggeration, but she really was popular among people in our town at the time. And Alan's reputation was outstanding in another sense. She would take people's belongings without permission, from favorite heiresses to umbrellas and dolls. It was just the beginning. As she grew older, stealing someone's boyfriend became an everyday occurrence. That's why she was highly regarded by men, but greatly disliked by women. And to tell the truth, I was one of those who disliked Alan. Having known her since childhood and being close to her family, I was her primary victim of theft. And now she's right in front of me. Alan's family moved away when we were in junior high, and we lost touch after that. How on earth did she find out about me? Although I had a bad feeling inside, I kept my usual business smile on my face.
But be aware, I'd appreciate Valentine we see. Of course, I remember you. Do you buzz match, Bakui?
I said with a forced smile.
I moved to this town, you know. And when I saw the poster for the yoga class, I thought, I've seen that face before. But looks don't matter for a yoga instructor, huh? If someone like you can do it, then I might be able to do it too.
Ah, this woman hasn't changed, even at this age. Actually, Sally's. Listening to the words that came out of Alan's mouth, I quickly realized, and today at the trial class, I decided not to mention my husband in my usual sales talk. It's no joke to have my life partner stolen at this age, and the woman who could do such a thing is Alan. It happened after the trial class that day. I was caught trying to leave quickly to avoid Alan and ended up having a late lunch with her. As soon as we sat down, Alan's endless boasting began under the guise of updating me on her life.
Apparently, she had a hard time with many men hitting her after moving and was even scouted by a certain idol agency. Alan kept talking forever with stories that were hard to tell whether they were true or false. Ignoring her lunch,
As the conversation dragged on, it seemed she just wanted to show off her current life.
You know, living on the top floor of a tower apartment isn't as great as it sounds. The elevator rides are long, and the people living on the lower floors are always making snide remarks. It's the worst, right? But what's even worse is my husband. He's a lawyer and makes good money, but his looks. He's the same age as me and a fat, out-of-shape guy. Well, thanks to him, I could be a stay-at-home wife. But being a stay-at-home wife is tough too. Oh, you wouldn't be able to handle that kind of life, would you? I mean, even at your age, you're still a yoga instructor.
While saying it's the worst, her face was clearly soaked in a sense of superiority. Wasn't that husband of hers stolen from someone else too? Suppressing the urge to say that, I quietly plead the listener. If I didn't react interestingly, Alan would get bored. Or so I thought.
Did you manage to get married? Wait, really? What kind of person is your husband? Is he a plain, unattractive, out-of-shape guy like you?
I could not help but get angry at Alan's words that seemed to mock me. I felt that my happy, precious days were being denied by her words. And above all, I wanted to see Alan's reaction when I showed her my husband.
My husband is 48 years old this year, but he does not look at all right. He often gets mistaken as someone in their 20s by my students. This were a foreign business. I worked for a foreign financial institution, and his earnings are, well, decent for that industry, I guess.
Alan stared intently at the photo of my husband. I showed her while saying this. As I looked at Alan's face, I felt both regret for having done it and a small sense of victory over Alan. But that feeling of victory was fleeting.
Wow, I might like this guy.
I had done it. Alan's words were a signal that she had found her prey. My sense of superiority over Alan disappeared immediately, leaving only regret. But it's okay. She doesn't know where I live or my contact information yet. If I leave without telling her anything, it'll be fine. Suppressing my rising anxiety, I continued to chat casually with Alan, pretending nothing was wrong. Of course, beneath our casual conversation was a battle between Alan trying to get more information about my husband and me trying to avoid it. I managed to end the conversation without giving Alan any information. I felt relieved that it worked out and went home that day, but Alan started coming to my yoga classes more often, trying to learn more. Each time, I dodged Alan's questions and eventually started avoiding conversation with her altogether. Perhaps sensing my attitude, one day Alan suddenly stopped coming to the yoga classes. I did it. That woman finally gave up. We may have been successful when we were younger, but now we're both middle-aged women in our 40s. There's no way things will go our way at this age. Serves her right. I grabbed a sense of victory this time and made a small victory pose. However, at that time, the real winner was not me, but Alan, because she had already gotten close to my husband, Richard. After that, my peaceful everyday life continued for a while. I sweated as a yoga instructor and devoted myself to housework as a good wife, supporting Richard at home. It was so peaceful that I completely forgot about Alan's recent visit. In retrospect, it must have been the calm before the storm. While I was spending my days in peace, I was slightly concerned about the change in Richard's attitude.
Sorry, I don't need a lunchbox for a while. I'm going to have lunch with a client.
We're sorry, I've been busy with work lately. I'll be home late, so eat dinner without me. Oh, I forgot. I'll eat dinner on the way home, so don't worry about my portion. He used to prioritize family over work and come home right away. But if it's work, there's nothing I can do. Richard's hard work might lead to better treatment at work. As a wife who protects the home, all I can do is support Richard. Besides, at the same time, I started teaching a new evening course at the yoga studio where I didn't have much time to think deeply. So I believed what Richard said. At the time, I believed that both of us being busy with work was a good thing and didn't doubt it. In hindsight, I was really stupid. One day, after a busy stretch, Alan appeared at the yoga studio. During class, for some reason, she kept giving me a smug look. It was the face that I hated the most. And class ended, and as I was cleaning up alone, Ellen came over, mocking my defensive stance and with a confident smile. She said, "Your husband is such a wonderful man, isn't he? His gestures while eating are cool, and his dimples when he laughs are so cute. Oh, did you know? He has a funny mole on his back. That guy? So that's what it was." The reason this woman disappeared from my sight wasn't that she had given up on my husband, Richard, but that she had already succeeded in getting close to him. The gestures while eating and the dimples when laughing mean they have shared meals together many times. Could it be that Richard not taking his lunchbox with him lately is because of that? But the bigger issue is the funny mole on his back. If I connect the fact that he showed her his back, and that Richard has been coming home late recently smelling like soap, the answer is obvious. This woman has already slept with Richard many times. I shuddered.
But you suddenly stank. Besides, I don't remember introducing you to my husband, so why are you meeting Richard?
Aren't you stupid? Even if you don't tell me, I can find out from the other students in the class. You're such a fool. I just asked those students for your address, staked it out for a few days, and they knew everything about your husband. After all, you have that photo of the husband you boast and show off. Now, Richard is captivated by me. Being beautiful is like a sin.
Oh, that can't be...
Didn't you notice until now? I'm taking him.
Richard will be taken by this woman. If that happens, everything I've built up until now will be gone. Is Richard really okay with that? Rather, does he even understand what's going on? My vision went dark as I thought about the possibility of losing everything we had built together and Richard's feelings. Alan left, laughing at me, clutching my stomach in disbelief. I was left alone in the classroom. Calm down. Calm down, ask Richard for confirmation. It could just be Alan's delusion. More than anything, I wanted to confirm Richard's true feelings. What will he do with everything we've built up so far? And above all, what do you think of Mal? That day, when I confronted Richard, after he returned home, he easily said, "I didn't know you were so insecure. I thought you trusted me." And that day, when I confronted Richard after he returned home, he easily said, "Sorry, everything Ellen said is true. I might have done something wrong to you, but you're the one who's bad. Your cooking is always tasteless, and you never compliment me when I come home from work. Besides, you always order me around, telling me to exercise and use this lotion. In contrast, Ellen is kind. Unlike you, she always tells me I'm cool and her cooking is delicious. It's so different from you. Wait a minute. The seasoning of the dishes and in the exercise, it's all for you, and yet you talk like that. What about the promises we made about work you said at the time?" Richard interrupted me and yelled, "Shut up. It's all your fault. You're always bossing me around, telling me to do this and that. I don't need a woman like you anymore. We're married, aren't we? Let's just talk it out properly. I have my reasons for asking you to do various things. Oh, you're so annoying. We did touch him around. Today, I'm going to Alan's house. Alan is different from you. She's kind and doesn't boss me around." With that, Richard left the house. Left alone, I sighed. I never thought Richard felt that way. It's true that I've asked Richard for various things. But to Richard, did it seem like I was ordering him around? Still, it was all for Richard's sake. Everything I've done for Richard was denied by the very person I did it for. That being said, I think the way he said it was honestly too much. Blaming everything on me and insisting I'm not the one at fault. And finally, I'm running to Alan's place where she'll treat me kindly. What kind of elementary schooler is he? I can't believe this is coming from a man who's almost 50 years old. Is that Richard's true nature? I admit my words and actions were bad, but looking back at Richard's attitude just now, my love for him cooled off all at once. Rather, he's head over heels for Alan, and it seems like he doesn't care about me anymore. That's when I realized, if that's the case, I'll just hand Richard over to Alan completely. If I do that, I might be able to get back at Alan twice over for all the grudges I've held so far. Recalling Alan's face when she laughed at me, I made up my mind. Next time, it's my turn to laugh. I'll get back at that woman twice over. Alan just came to the yoga class the next day as well. Just like yesterday, she looked at me with a smug expression throughout the class. That smile won't last long. I reassured myself and calmed my emotions. When the class ended, Alan approached me just like yesterday.
Today I have a date with Richard. I don't know why, but he stayed at my house yesterday, and now we feel like a real married couple. Oh, I'm sorry. The real wife is right here.
If you like Richard that much, go ahead. He doesn't seem to love me anymore, so I'll let you have him.
Alan, who wanted to see my frustrated face, looked taken aback for a moment, but that was short-lived.
Well, giving up so easily is quite the defeatist attitude, but of course he's already captivated by me. Weren't you married too? Have you talked to your husband about this? Huh, I can handle that, flabby guy. I'm currently setting him up for an affair, and I'll use that as a leverage to break out with him cleanly.
How despicable. That's what I thought. taking whatever she wants and discarding it as soon as she's done with it. I feel so sorry for her husband.
Well then, I'll really take Richard. Weaning and dull women always lose, don't they? Just a woman like you can only look forward to a lonely old age all by yourself.
With that declaration of victory, Ellen left. Let her say what she wants. I had Richard write the divorce papers that day. Richard must have already heard about today's events from Alien. He signed the papers without asking any questions. As I watched him, I thought about how anticlimactic the end of our once happy life together was. But I don't want any regrets. Before Richard and I changed our minds, we both signed the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office right away. Now I'm single. I rented a place nearby, and for a while I lived a comfortable life alone. That being said, I couldn't rely on just my yoga instructor income, so I had to dip into the savings little by little. However, while living alone without fear of the future, I was in touch with someone. All I had to do was wait for a reply. A few months later, Ellen came to my yoga class, but this time she came after the class was over. As soon as she came out to me, Ellen burst into tears and said, "What's wrong with that man? He was so cool at first. But as soon as we got married, he got fat and his skin got rough. Kins, now he's just a regular chubby middle-aged man and his salary is low too. I had high hopes because he worked for a famous foreign financial firm. What's going on? I have been waiting for this." And with a smirk in my heart, I pretended to console Alan and told her, "Don't worry. Listen, the reason he was slim and smooth-skinned until now was all because of my meal management and exercise guidance. But since he left me and you spoiled him, he just returned to his true self."
Yes, but since he left me and you spoiled him, he just returned to his true self. As the real Richard. In this case. And while it's true that he worked for a foreign financial institution, it was actually a subsidiary of a related company. I just exaggerated that part, Lau.
Yes, even before we got married, I have been paying attention to Richard's diet and I made him a well-balanced lunchbox every day. Of course, I also made him eat dinner at home, so I was able to manage all of Richard's meals. I also made him exercise and use men's skincare products like lotion for his skin. That's how he was able to maintain his youthful appearance, which was hard to believe he was in his 40s. But that all disappeared when we divorced. And his new wife, Alan, just spoiled Richard. I'm sure she didn't consider nutrition when cooking and didn't make him exercise either. It's only natural that he would return to his old self with that kind of lifestyle.
Wait, so that man was only put together thanks to you? What's that?
Don't worry, Survivor Squashtable. With your love, he can become a wonderful man again. Don't really care, Lo. God, at first is I.
I don't need an old man like that. You take him back.
I was truly amazed at this woman's nerve, treating people like objects. But of course, I had no intention of going back to how things were.
Sorry, I already found my new partner. This is what he looks like. Higer, says Sally's right away.
I showed Alan a picture of my new partner. The man on my smartphone was a tall, gentle-looking guy wearing a lawyer's badge.
Gosh, what a great guy. Hey, I'm more suited for him than you. Let's trade husbands, okay?
Now it was my turn to burst out laughing.
Why don't you ask him yourself? Let's marry me. Quiz modifality. Oh, I mean, please go back to how you were. This man is your ex-husband.
Begging first, how did that chubby man become such a great guy? That's your lying. And I can't forgive you for being with him.
She still said things like that. I was dumbfounded. I was lying at. After I divorced Richard and started living alone, the person I kept in touch with was none other than him. Of course, I was in contact with him to take revenge on Aelin. First, I dramatically changed his appearance through my diet management and exercise guidance. This was course to later make Alan feel regretful. However, this revenge was only the first stage. The second stage was yet to come.
Did you forget that your ex-husband is a lawyer? I already told him that you fabricated his affair. I think a compensation claim from him will arrive at your place soon. Just more offer I was...
Wait, that's a lie.
Oh, and for me too. I filed a claim for consolation money for having an affair with my husband. Of course I have the strongest lawyer, your ex-husband, on my side.
I could hear a small scream from Alan, but it was too late.
Oh, I almost forgot. Richard got his current job back thanks to a connection at my yoga studio. But I told that person about what happened, and and they were very disappointed. Tell us what will happen to Richard's treatment now.
Alan seemed to be at a loss for words. I left Alan standing there and elegantly exited the classroom. Serves you right. She had taken so much from me, even stealing my husband this time. This was a dirt punishment. After a while, Alan had to pay a large sum of compensation due to her lawsuit. She sold the luxury tower apartment she had wanted her divorce and now apparently lives in a cheap apartment with Richard. As I predicted, Richard's salary decreased even more after being demoted and Alan had to find a part-time job. Some of my yoga students work at her part-time job, so I naturally talk about Alan there. Everyone says, "What a horrible woman." Teacher, you went through so much. We'll make sure she gets what she deserves. I wonder what kind of guidance we should give her. I'm looking forward to it. They say various encouraging things. As for me, I happily remarried Alan's ex-husband. Thanks to my dedicated diet management and exercise guidance, he's transformed dramatically from his previous overweight figure to being featured in magazines. But due to the effects, he now has an increased number of legal requests and is struggling to keep up, but he is so happy about it. Unlike Richard, he listens to my various advice and appreciates it. That's why I'm even more motivated to cook for him every day. Oh, and the tower apartment Alan gave up is now where we live. From the window of the tower apartment, Alan's apartment seems so small that it makes me laugh. My revenge is now over. From now on, I plan to live a peaceful and happy life with him. One day, my mother-in-law's chronic illness worsened and she had to be hospitalized. The responsibility fell on my husband John and me to take care of her. John has 2 older brothers, but they left for college in the city, landed jobs there as well, married city girls they met, and built their homes in the city. Therefore, this saw them returning to our small town. The last time we saw them was at the 3-year memorial service for their father, my father-in-law. It was only the 2 brothers who came, even for the 3-year memorial service. Their wives and children, who had been well taken care of by my mother-in-law, were conspicuously absent. They might think it's none of their business since their husbands came, but the brothers' wives told me it's a hassle, so we'd rather keep it to family only. The travel costs are already in the hundreds of dollars.
It's a hassle, so we'd rather keep it to family only. The travel costs are already in the hundreds of dollars.
After discussing with my mother-in-law, we decided to hold the 7-year memorial service just between us and her. But then our illness took a turn for the worse, and she had to be hospitalized again. Since we have a small child at home, we can't bring them to the hospital, so they're staying with my parents. My mother-in-law feels guilty about burdening my parents, but there's really nothing we can do about it. John helps out as much as he can, visiting after work to bring laundry home or help clean her up. We've let the brothers know about the hospitalization, but they haven't visited or sent any gifts. Despite this, the wives of the brothers are still complaining about not receiving the seasonal premium fruits that my mother-in-law sends them every year.
They're aware that my mother-in-law is in the hospital, right? I said, Aubrey,
That to which they replied, "You should be more thoughtful and send something over."
The fruits she sends are luxury items that we rarely get to eat ourselves, even in our hometown. The only time we can enjoy them is when we visit my parents.
I told them we are not well off enough to send a box worth hundreds of dollars.
They sighed and said, "This is the only time being from a small town is worth anything."
It was really infuriating. We ignored the message they left on my in-laws' answering machine, but then they called our house. They were complaining about not being able to share with their friends because they hadn't received their share. My mother-in-law reassures us that she'll pay us back for what we spent on her care, but we've been covering some of the smaller expenses out of pocket. When my father-in-law passed away, all of his estate, which is worth more than $10 million, even if we sold the house and land, was inherited by my mother-in-law for her retirement. She's not impoverished since she has a bit of a pension, but she's not well off either. Despite this, she's been sending boxes of products worth hundreds of dollars from local farmers to both of her sons' families every year. It's something the locals rarely get to taste since it's not sold in markets, only at farmers' markets. It's expensive, and for us, a family struggling with kids, we can only get a small share from my parents or my mother-in-law. On top of this, there have been no signs of gratitude or return gifts from the brothers' families.
My mother-in-law once complained, "They don't even call to let me know they've received the boxes."
When John told his brothers about her hospitalization, their reaction was just bland. Oh, really, Gimperstand? The main thing is that it didn't say anything about visiting.
Apparently, my mother-in-law was hoping her sons would visit, so I felt bad for her. A few days passed and things went downhill. Last night, my mother-in-law called from the hospital. She wanted me to send some luxury fruit on behalf of her sons. Frustrated that she couldn't get anywhere with me, it seemed she directly called the hospital where my mother-in-law was. Naturally, the patient herself couldn't answer, so a nurse brought a note with a message. It turned out it was the eldest son's wife who made the call.
The note had written something like, "The second son's wife is struggling because nothing has been sent, so please hurry up."
My husband, John, was the one who answered my mother-in-law's call, and he lost his temper.
He told if you're going to go out of your way for both brothers' families, we're stepping back. Extra nursing care and laundry services are taken care of, Rosie. Quiet as we be served as guarantors. We're done here, right? The rest is up to your sons.
As since we served as guarantors, we're done here, right? The rest is up to your sons. Apparently, he also planned to shout at his brothers over the phone, "Buy your own fruit on my."
I had a suspicion that my mother-in-law was favoring her accomplished sons, so there was something refreshing about the situation. From that day on, John strongly advised me not to go to the hospital, so I decided not to. Since my mother-in-law's condition is improving and her life is not in danger, I plan to do as she says. Since John chose to stay in our hometown, we took care of my father-in-law during his illness, and at that time, my mother-in-law was also going to the hospital, so we did what was asked of us, like visiting him. However, after my father-in-law's death, I was the only one who was able to take actions on the weekdays, running around and dealing with all the paperwork carrying my baby on the back. At that time, I thought it couldn't be helped since my mother-in-law didn't have a driver's license. Yet, I never received any gratitude, let alone thank you from my sister-in-laws.
Today, my mother-in-law called and said, "Have you sent it? If you don't hurry, the good ones will be gone. And why aren't you coming to the hospital today? Did someone get a fever? You can leave them at your parents' house and come here."
I felt like I had woken up from a long dream. So, I told my mother-in-law that John said we didn't need to take care of her anymore, that we wouldn't be able to afford the premium fruit because we're always on a tight budget. Then, she grumbled over the phone that I lacked thoughtfulness for a woman, that I should have sent something even if not asked to, that I was low-level because I only graduated high school, that we should have tumbled towards her house because my sister-in-law graduated from prestigious universities.
I'm a high school graduate with limited capabilities, so I'll excuse myself from taking care of you, Mother.
I found myself retorting spontaneously,
My heart was pounding for a while, but when I reported to John after he returned home, he said, "That's fine, don't go to the hospital again." My husband, John, apparently told his brothers. The wives have been asking for premium fruits for Mom, but she's in the hospital and I have no plans to send her any. If you guys want her to have them so badly, bring them when you visit her.
When his brothers responded that they didn't have time and that the travel would be expensive, he replied, "It's unfair for just my wife and I to care for Mom. We've been doing it so far. Now it's your turn, guys." And with that, he ended the call. Looks like there's a conflict brewing, but there's nothing I can do. Probably because John only has a high school diploma, our family seems to be looked down upon. His brother-in-law and their wives all graduated from famous city colleges, presumably in New York. I think my mother-in-law takes great pride in that. I never minded taking care of the in-laws in the past, and I have plenty of friends who, despite their usual conflicts, step up when someone falls ill. I thought that's what you do. John standing his ground felt good, but I was startled because we live in a small town surrounded by relatives. Before my mother-in-law could complain to them, I decided to pay a visit to my uncle, who had acted as our matchmaker. My uncle knew that we were the only ones taking care of my in-laws and promised to explain the situation to the rest of the family so that my mother-in-law wouldn't badmouth us. He just asked us to accompany her when she gets discharged from the hospital. Since we don't know when she'll be discharged, if it's on a day off, John will go, and if it's on a weekday, I'll go with my uncle. He also promised to question my mother-in-law on why she treats her children differently. Then just recently, my mother-in-law's sister, my aunt, called to complain. Apparently, since we've given up caring for my mother-in-law, she has summoned my aunt to the hospital. She said her children should look after her, so when she asked to call their sons, it turned out she had already done so.
But the wives of her sons told her, "We're too far away and can't come. We're also tight on money because of our children's education expenses," and hung up on her.
I had had a headache. Since it was a weekday, and John rarely gets days off, I thought I'd have to go. But considering what was said, I didn't want to. Honestly, I didn't want to see my mother-in-law's face anymore. I figured when she's discharged, she'd ask us to come help, and it felt really depressing. Even if John had turned her down, the family around us didn't seem to approve.
My aunt is taking care of her bedridden mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law usually says she's doing a tough job.
I thought calling my aunt was a form of harassment against us. I wonder why those of us who stayed in the local town end up drawing this short straw. I ended up feeling envious of the luxurious lives of my brother-in-law's wives, who are both out of the local town. I discussed it with John when he got home, and he called his eldest brother. They talked for a while, and apparently other relatives, besides my uncle and aunt, had called the eldest brother's place. So the two brothers are going to come back for the weekend to discuss how to take care of their mother in the future. At the discussion, along with her two brothers, John and I, uncle, aunt, and the other relatives were going to talk. I've decided to make a detailed list of the money I've lent to my mother-in-law that hasn't been returned and the things I've done for her. I presented this to the family meeting, which included my mother-in-law, who was temporarily discharged from the hospital. During the discussion, my mother-in-law insisted that her eldest son, who lives in a single-family home and graduated from a good university in the city, should take care of her. In the end, he reluctantly agreed to take her in. After her discharge from the hospital, my mother-in-law moved to the city with her hospital referral letter and my late father-in-law's memorial tablet. As for the remaining family home, my uncles and aunts suggested that my husband should keep it considering he couldn't go to college. However, we declined as we didn't need it and moved into an apartment on my family's side. We have not informed our addresses or contact information to my mother-in-law or my brother-in-law. John and I also decided to change our mobile numbers, which had been in use for 3 years, and remove our landline phone, effectively cutting ties. We thought that this would be the end of it, but recently we received a phone call from my uncle that my mother-in-law had returned to the family home. My mother relayed the message to us. Apparently, the eldest brother's wife had been very cold to my mother-in-law because the eldest brother had made the decision to take her in without consulting his wife. She had even been told to get her own meals by herself, even if it was right after being discharged from the hospital. After a month, she couldn't take it anymore and asked her second son for help, but he also declined since his wife had already been cautious about the situation from the start. That's why she returned to her original family home. Just because my uncle contacted us doesn't mean we plan to help my mother-in-law.
During our discussion, John was hurt when my mother-in-law told him, "You were a poor student and had no choice but to stay here in the small town. You're my disappointing third son."
She even said she was disappointed that I, whom John met and married at his job after graduating from his vocational school, only had a high school education. We no longer feel the need to appease my mother-in-law after such harsh words. I've been wary of this situation from the start, given the way my sister-in-law had acted. That's why I didn't take my aunt and uncle's advice to move into the family home. But I never thought she'd return in such a short amount of time.
Especially after the eldest brother boasted, "If you hate taking care of Mom so much, I'll let my wife do it."
I expected her to at least stay longer. In our discussion, I had a list of daily necessities that my mother-in-law had used and the money I had spent on her, which I had been keeping in the household budget book. I also wrote down the things I did for the family home, like going to the city hall to get a burial permit after my father-in-law's funeral, dealing with pension procedures, and the transportation costs for taking my mother-in-law to the hospital. I made copies and handed them over to John's two older brothers, my uncle and my aunt. John's two older brothers said it was only natural because they're her children, but my uncle and aunt said it was unfair for John alone to bear the burden. They told my mother-in-law to return the money that he had fronted.
My mother-in-law glared at me angrily and threw some money at John from her wallet while saying, "You've been influenced by your wife."
Even my uncle seemed to lose his patience with the situation. He stood up and slapped my mother-in-law.
In the end, she dismissively spat out, "I don't need a child like this," to her.
It seems that was when my husband, John, was able to make the decision to cut ties. Here's a funny side note. The money that my mother-in-law had thrown at us was short by a few $1,000s when we counted it later. We went to my uncle and aunt about the missing money, but we also told them we're not claiming it, thinking of it as severance money. Afterward, my real mother received a call. It seems my mother-in-law had called her old home.
"It's pitiful to be taken in by a daughter-in-law who has done nothing for my son. Since she's back, I'll come and take care of her hospital visits," she said, as if it was only natural.
My mother replied, "We didn't ask for a sister-in-law to come, and the married couple are already adults. We have no intention of interfering. I heard that you said you didn't need your youngest son and went to the city to be taken care of by your eldest. Why are you here?" After that, she hung up without a word.
2 years have passed since then. After that, it seems that my uncle and 2 elder brother-in-law, their wives, and my mother-in-law had a discussion.
We had moved after my mother-in-law went to the elder brother's house, so we received a message through my parents' house for my uncle to participate. But John said I fulfilled my responsibilities as a child. If any money comes in, please offset it by disclaiming my inheritance.
So we did not participate. I know about what happened after a while from my aunt. The wives of my brother-in-law said they wanted my mother-in-law to live locally and be taken care of by us, and they wanted us to take care of all her care and old age. In return, their husbands would renounce my mother-in-law's property. It's a really good condition, so the youngest couple should accept it. But knowing what they were jealous of, they said that since the youngest could only live locally, they should accept the But knowing what they were jealous of, they said that since the youngest could only live locally, it was natural for those who remained in the local area to take care of their parents, alternating between the 2 of them. It was a stark reminder of the fundamental difference in thinking between the wives of my brother-in-law and us. By the way, my mother-in-law's property is just a 30-year-old house built on an 80-square-foot plot of land in her pension. Here in the countryside, an 80-square-foot single-family home is on the smaller side. This isn't meant to belittle my mother-in-law's real family, but it is a fact. In fact, my real home, being a part-time farm, has a 200-square-foot plot of land, and my brother is building a house on the property. Even so, the value of the land isn't much, and to think they could lure us in with such a thing, it was a stark reminder of the fundamental difference in thinking between the wives of my brother-in-law and us. In the past, we didn't do it because we could receive the house, but because she was John's mother, we felt obligated to be there for her because we were nearby, and she must have felt lonely being left alone. My mother-in-law must have felt lonely back then. She even thanked us. However, from the persistent demands for premium fruit by the wives of my brother-in-laws, we came to understand all of my mother-in-law's true feelings and nature and grew to loathe everything, thus becoming estranged. Still, it seems that our intentions did not get through to the wives of my brother-in-laws at all. My aunt, too, has been taking care of her mother-in-law when she got married, so she tried explaining to my brother-in-law's wives that it's not how they think it is, and even voiced her opinion to my mother-in-law. But it seems like they just couldn't understand each other. After all, my mother-in-law just wants to live with my successful brother-in-law in the city, as she's always been telling people around her, and she insists that they take her in no matter which one. Despite the continued disagreements that came after, it seems like in the end, they rented an apartment near my eldest brother's house with my mother-in-law's pension and assistance from my brother-in-law. But my brother-in-law's wives have made it clear they won't look after her at all. If anything happens, they plan to rely on caregiver support and admit her into a facility. Now, it seems my mother-in-law frequently calls my aunt, saying she's lonely.
And through my family, my aunt requested my husband, John, to contact her sister, who's not been the brightest, but still pitiful. I said he refused, saying there are things that are unforgivable, especially because she's a parent of mine.
The 3rd son, who could only go to a technical college, who doesn't shine in comparison to his older brothers, who could only marry a high school graduate, who could only get a job in a company that doesn't even air commercials on TV, who wears a polo shirt to work and wears work clothes, while his brothers go to work in suits every day. I feel sorry for John, who is told to his face by his mother that she wouldn't be able to boast to society if such a 3rd son and his wife took care of her. I understand how John feels, so I probably won't forgive my mother-in-law in the future. I am proud of John, who works hard every day, dripping with sweat, because he is the man I love. The trigger was premium fruits, but I'm really glad that I woke up this time and learned not only about my brother-in-law's wives, but also about my mother-in-law's true character. I've been living in my hometown for a long time. I like it here, and I thought I cherished my mother-in-law. But it seems she didn't feel the same way, and she probably hated being looked after by the poorly performing 3rd son. After moving to a new house, we no longer had to worry about going to the hospital, and we have a bit more free time and money. Our child is also a bit bigger, and we have more time to ourselves, but now we're living happily as a family of 3. Because of my mother-in-law, John had a very sad face for a while, but now he looks much clearer than before. For John, this is his home. We want to continue living happily as a family in this house.